Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date and help the channel grow. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And now, on with the show. You are listening to the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion with the one and only Gray. Greetings, opinion nerds. It is I, the one they call Gray, and today we're answering the door to suspense with director M. Night Shyamalan's A Knock at the Cabin on this latest random active opinion coming up right now. There are times when a knock-knock is nothing to laugh about, opinion nerds. What would you do? Movies can take us to places both fantastic and mundane, showing us worlds beyond what we can imagine and exactly as we see outside. Movies can put us in the middle of action experiences we'd never otherwise know and expose us to people and perspectives we could go our entire lives without encountering. For some of us, movies are as close as we'll ever get to some people, places, and things, and if we accept them with the right frame of mind, they can help us grow and enrich us as people. Usually a film does this by putting you in the shoes of a character, or at least very close to them, and helping you share the experience they're having. Through the techno-magic of cinema, filmmakers impart upon the audience a sense of what the character is thinking, or feeling, or even just how it is they see the world around them. That's the transportive magic of cinema. One of the most intriguing things a film can do is put you into a space with a character that has to make a big choice. A choice that will fundamentally change something about the world around them in a permanent way and asking, what would you do? It's not a question with a right or wrong answer, and if we're really engaging with the film, it can offer us a great exercise in empathy and something that we can take with us back into the world. Imagine being another person, having an experience, and ask yourself, what would you do? A family vacation is terrifyingly interrupted when a group of weaponed strangers come calling with a chilling proposition. You must choose to kill a member of your family or live long enough to watch humanity's extinction. It sounds preposterous right up to the moment it seems it might actually be true. Directed by M. Night Shyamalan from a screenplay by Shayamalan, Steve Desmond, and Michael Sherman, A Knock at the Cabin stars Dave Bautista, Jonathan Groff, Ben Aldridge, Rupert Grint, Nikki Amuka Bird, Abby Quinn, and Kristen Cui. Knock knock, who's there? Spoilers. Maybe. To reiterate a tired tale, in the early 2000s, director M. Night Shyamalan was being toasted as the next Steven Spielberg. After a couple of long-forgotten flicks, his films The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and Signs were generating massive box office while the director was becoming known for creating films with unique and shocking twist endings. Unfortunately, as often happens, either the novelty wore off or the typical Hollywood attempts to replicate his approach diluted its effectiveness, but by the time of 2008's The Happening, Shyamalan had found himself in director jail, a place once successful filmmakers end up when they lose the goodwill of critics and the interest of audiences. After a couple of disastrous attempts at jobbing his way back up the ladder, Shyamalan has spent the last decade making his films his way. Finding a creative second wind, the director is proving that his early works weren't just flukes built on cheap gimmicks and that he is a solid filmmaker with a unique creative vision. Based on the Paul Tremblay novel, The Cabin at the End of the World, Knock at the Cabin is a tidy, efficient thriller built around a simple moral exercise, a variant of the trolley problem as articulated by philosopher Philip Foot in 1967. The exercise proposes a problem. A trolley car is headed towards a split in its tracks. On one track is a single person. On the other, 5 people. The people cannot be moved and the trolley cannot be stopped. You are at the lever that will determine which track the trolley takes. If you do nothing, the trolley will continue on its path and kill the 5 people. If you pull the switch, the trolley will change track, sparing the 5, but killing the 1. While this question may seem simple enough from a theoretical perspective, the film compounds the problem by making the single person someone you love, a member of your own family like a spouse or a child, while the other choice is the literal entirety of the human race. To make the choice as difficult as possible, the film throws up a number of conflicts. Groff's Eric and Aldridge's Andrew are a couple that has fought adversity just to be together, adopting Kui's Wen as their daughter and making a pact that their family will come before anything else. Always. The four who have come to them have an impossible-to-believe story of shared apocalyptic visions complicated by the circumstances under which they finally meet. Eric and Andrew are also very different people, Eric being more gentle and trusting, while the more fiery Andrew has suffered in ways that make him more aggressively protective. More difficult is that the four intruders, Leonard, Sabrina, Adrian, and Redmond, while clearly troubled, are not insane or violent monsters, nor are they zealots of any kind, both having their own doubts and not being altogether pleased about their role in things. The screenplay very intelligently lays all the information out for the audience, allowing you to doubt and question just as Eric and Andrew do, building its case slowly while never outright stating what's true. The most frightening thing about it is that it all comes down to an issue of faith, a choice to believe that needs to be made by the character that believes the least. It's the trolley problem on steroids, except there's no way to know if the trolley is even real. Shyamalan and DP Jaron Blanchke shot the movie on 35mm film in what could be called vintage anamorphic lenses if you believe that something less than 40 years old can be considered vintage. The result isn't specifically better or worse than shooting digital, but one that engages the organic qualities of film that digital can't quite replicate. Shyamalan's visual style supports his slow and methodical approach to storytelling and continues his use of framings that keep you just on the edge of visual comfort while being another example of how you can create suspense and tension without hiding anything from the camera. This is not a horror film, so there is very little violence or gore, as it doesn't want to provoke, repulse, or shock the audience. The camera is engaged with the material, but it's not incredibly active, instead focusing on long close-ups and slow reveals of information. Combined with the subtle score from Erdis Steffensdotter, the goal is to create a sense of stress and uncertainty, not to frighten or push the audience into a self-defensive mode, but to pull them in bit by bit. Running only 100 minutes, the efficient screenplay, aided greatly by the almost single location setting, leaves plenty of space to get to know the characters well enough to understand why and how everyone got where they are. While creating a sympathetic pair in Andrew and Eric and emphasizing the strength of their relationship, the film takes the time to build a sense of empathy between the audience and the four intruders, fostering an understanding that the family aren't the only ones required to make a sacrifice. Though in a sense it may have been nice for the fact that Eric and Andrew are a same-sex couple to go unremarked upon as if it's just a thing that exists, the fact is only commented on insofar as it provides additional storytelling support for the characters that's more or less unique to that specific life experience. It isn't just a matter of swapping a gay couple for a straight one for the purpose of reaching out to a demographic. And while it does matter as far as storytelling goes, it isn't important to what the characters face or why. If anything, I feel that the film experience may actually be a little too gentle, but that isn't to say that I don't understand why. Despite the fact that this can be looked at on the surface as essentially a home invasion plot, the intruders aren't there to terrorize or scare Eric and Andrew into doing what they want, so it wouldn't make sense for the film to push the intensity of the experience to the point that the audience becomes defensive. The intruders are there to plead a case, literally begging Andrew and Eric to save the world. If you push the audience too hard, it makes it difficult for them to believe in how the pair slowly come to grips with the situation. So while a big part of me was looking for Shyamalan to give the lever just a little push, I completely understand the fine line he was trying to walk. I'm not going to be the only one to bring this up, but Bautista is fantastic as the gentle and apologetic Leonard. All of the intruders are played wonderfully, but Leonard, as the group's de facto leader, really does set the tone, and Bautista's quiet and restrained performance contrasts so well with his imposing presence. He still has a stiff delivery and hasn't gotten to the point where he feels as if he's taking on characters any further than their wardrobe, but what he can do is reach down and bring out performative emotions in a way many wrestlers turned actors can't, and that comes from not being afraid to be vulnerable. You can tell that Bautista doesn't just want to be a star, he wants to be an actor, and the roles he's taking on serve that effort. But if Bautista is the surprise cherry on top, the base of the sundae is Ben Aldridge's Andrew. In many ways, the film quickly becomes Andrew's story, and Aldridge is called upon to do a lot of the emotional heavy lifting, along with being an imposing physical presence in his own right. Andrew is a beast, and there's an action movie in Aldridge's future if he wants it. I have no doubt of that. I don't know how other people are looking at it, and maybe I'm just a big softie, but I couldn't stop seeing the film as a kind of love story, with the ending being dictated by whatever that love gives Eric and Andrew the strength to do. There's a perspective some have chosen to pursue that paints a grim image of the film as some kind of anti-LGBTQ tome, calling it a story about how religious zealots torture a queer couple on behalf of a god that seems to want one of them to choose to kill the other. There are, of course, several holes in this perspective, starting with the fact that the intruders declare no religious affiliation, and any reference to God is in a metaphysical yet non-religious sense. And with little Wen in the mix as a potential sacrifice, it stops being strictly an issue of sexuality. The film even brings the issue up and makes it part of its storytelling, which some may see as a proactive defense against something the filmmakers knew would be problematic. But just as an aside, what's the choice there? The characters come directly from the book, and if they change them, they rightfully face an outcry against the erasing of queer representation. But they can't change the circumstances of the plot. And if the story hinges on the strength of a loving relationship, isn't it meaningful to show that those relationships are not the sole domain of straight people? But anyway, back to the point. The core of the narrative is the relationship between Eric and Andrew, which the film ultimately uses as a point of affirmation. This is where the question comes in as you contemplate what you would do in that situation, both if you were those characters and just as a question about yourself. What ramps up the intensity of that is not simply that one of the two has to die, but that in order for the sacrifice to work, the other has to kill them. They can't kill themselves or be killed by anyone else, otherwise the intruders would just storm in and pick somebody. To me, that's the most difficult part of the equation. I'd like to think I would have no problem dying to save my wife's life. Do it in a Chicago second. But I can't imagine asking her to carry the memory of being the one to pull the trigger, and there is no way in the blue icy hell I would ever be on the other side of that. So what do? Do you doom all of humanity to die a painful, fiery death, or do you force the person you love most in the world, a love so pure it's what attracted the attention of whatever is the cause of all this terribleness, to carry the trauma of having to take your life? It's not really so simple, is it? Knock at the Cabin isn't the most intense or in-depth exploration of its idea one might imagine, but its choice to focus on a very specific perspective on the experience is effective. It's not a movie interested in talking about the larger religious or metaphysical implications of its premise and chooses only to focus on the people involved. It may not be a love story, but it can be seen as a story about love. If you have to have faith in something and the institutions of humanity don't seem to be enough, you can always put your faith in love, right? That might be what these characters do, but is that what you would do? The question isn't explicitly presented to the audience, but the film is an implicit invitation to have that conversation with yourself. The power cinema has to put you in a specific psychological or emotional perspective to approach this question is unique to the form. It's something no painting or book can do quite as effectively. Movies can take us anywhere we can imagine, no matter how insane or how plain, but the most interesting, the most terrifying, the most enlightening place is inside of ourselves. It's not a place everyone likes to go, and a lot of our entertainment seems far more interested in getting us away from rather than closer to ourselves. That's why whenever I get the chance to turn my gaze inward, I reach out and grab it like the world is coming to an end. But that's just what I do. This has been the Narrated, Not the Popular Opinion. As always, I have been Gray, and if you like what you heard, you can leave a tip at our Ko-Fi page at ko-fi.com/notthepopularopinion. You can follow us on Twitter at @only_Gray, and don't forget our main page at notthepopularopinion.wordpress.com, where you'll find more great articles just like this. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if you're as good to others as you are to yourself, we might just make it through this mess. See ya.